Hey, everybody. Happy Sunday evening. I'm Anjanette Levy, and thank you so much for visiting my channel and checking in. We're going to be talking about the very latest in the Idaho Murders case tonight. And we'll also talk about another case at the end that we'll be following now that Bryan Kohberger has officially pleaded guilty and will be sentenced later this month in Ada County. We'll be covering other cases too, which we've been wanting to do here on the channel anyway. But right now we're going to talk about the very latest in the Idaho Murders case. Please, if you haven't already, when you can't come in, give me a thumbs up, the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And we also have memberships. Thank you to all the mods for being here tonight, too. The docket is here. Mo is here. Webby is here. Mel Mack is here. So thanks, everybody, for helping me out and moderating. And everybody give them a great shout out. Also, if you're just joining for the first time or you're just joining, period, let me know in the comments where you are joining from. I love reading where everybody's from. I see that all the time in the comments. People will tell me they're from Germany, South Africa, Australia. So it's really cool when I get to read where everybody is from. And obviously we have people within the United States watching too, which is obviously very cool. The first thing I want to talk about right now is the fact that yesterday was Xana Kernodle's birthday, or what would have been her 23rd birthday. The Gonsalves family posted on their page about Xana's birthday. They wrote, "Happy heavenly birthday, Xana. Everyone loves you and misses your beautiful smile. You have changed lives across the world. You will never be forgotten." There is Xana Kernodle, such a beautiful, lovely young woman. I, of course, did not know her, but I've seen the TikTok videos of her. Just a really beautiful soul. You can tell that. And you can tell just to look at her. It's just terrible. Her obituary says her birthday was July 5th, 2002. So if you do the math there, she would have turned 23 yesterday. So she would have celebrated her 23rd birthday. She would have graduated. She would have already graduated from the University of Idaho. And there she is. Just really sad. I think a lot of people are still a little bit shocked over what's happened. You know, I'm shocked and I'm not. And I say this because I kept thinking to myself, every motion that Ann Taylor has filed, substantively, you know, it's been denied. You know, the judge threw her a bone here or there, but really, in all actuality, they were losing every one of their motions. They lost every one of their motions to suppress the evidence in this case. And I think the final straw came last week, not this past week, I'm sorry, but the week before, when Judge Hippler denied their request to delay the trial, the request for the continuance. He said, no, we're going to trial. He also denied the alternate perpetrator evidence. He told the defense that they hadn't put anything up except for speculation. So that was denied as well. And so I think those were the final straws. I think the defense knew they were going to lose those motions. And I think that Bryan Kohberger, while he did a lot of things that don't show humanity or common sense, he probably has enough sense to realize that this was a losing case. And so there's been a lot of speculation about him not wanting his parents on the stand, that he didn't want them testifying, possibly about the phone calls they received from him, and possibly that cross-country trip that Michael Kohberger made with his son driving back from Washington to Pennsylvania in December of 2022 after the classes ended for the semester. But I just don't think we can speculate about that. His defense attorneys, Alyssa Massa, she had said in court one day, his parents love him. They've had to hear all of this stuff on the news about them possibly being called to testify in the case. They were not going to be barred from the courtroom because they were going to be called by prosecutors to testify, potentially. There were going to be family members called to testify. So, something happened, something clicked with him. And I'm not sure that this wasn't Ann Taylor's game plan the whole time, just to file every motion she could, trying to look for any type of defense she could, because their avenues of defense were narrowing and narrowing and narrowing. I mean, they had nobody they could point the finger at and say, this is the person who did it. This is the real guy or the real suspect. They had nothing. They could only say, look, this was a rush to judgment and our guy didn't do it. But you had the DNA on the snap of the knife sheath. You had the vehicle identification. You had DM, who was going to testify and say she saw this guy who matches Bryan Kohberger's description to a T, 5'10", 5'10", 6 feet tall, a little bit taller than she was, bushy eyebrows, all black, athletic build, skinny, but not, he was not basketball player skinny is what she said. I mean, it would have all been put together and it would have been a circumstantial case. Plus you have the selfies that Dateline showed. I mean, remember the selfies, guys? The selfies, he literally looks like he's reliving that night. We can now say that. The selfies that Dateline published were just so eerie. When you think about what DM described, and this is what Dateline published. This was from, I believe, December, after the homicides, December of 2022. There were a number of selfies on Bryan Kohberger's phone. He's wearing all black, similar to what was described by DM. And that practically looks like he's reliving this. The Ted Bundy searches, maybe he had a fixation or a fascination with Ted Bundy. I'm not really sure. Maybe he didn't. But I tend to think he did. The news searches, the searches for his name. He's looking to see if there's news about himself with regard to these homicides, the cleaning of the car, the excessive cleaning of the car to ensure that there was no evidence left behind and his home. It was just all too much. There was no way that they were, anything can happen at a jury trial, anything. And maybe that's part of the reason Bill Thompson said, yeah, we'll do this deal because it's going to save the state money. We won't have any appeals, which I'm not so sure I believe that. He can say now, I'm not going to appeal. I waive my right to appeal, but you just don't know what can happen down the road, especially if laws ever change. You don't know that. So it sounds really good right now, but you just never know. I'm keeping an eye on your comments, everybody. I also want to show you what the Gonsalves family, of course, Jeff Kernodle, Xana's father, he released a statement to the New York Times telling the New York Times he did not support the plea agreement. However, the Mogans do. Maddie Mogan's family, her mother, Karen Laramie, her stepfather, Scott Laramie, her father, Ben Mogan, they do support it. And of course, Ethan Chapin's family supported this. But this is what the Gonsalveses have said, and they've kind of said this before, and it's making headlines. It's making headlines in People magazine and the New York Post. But we already knew about this. Steve Gonsalves had said this a while back on a podcast. I think it was on the Drunk Turkey Show. So I will share my screen and show you what the Gonsalveses are saying. This is from the other day. Christy Gonsalves, I believe it was Christy posted this. Friends, we are home. Thank you for all of your support, love, and prayers. This page is a place of comfort for me, my safe place. You all have been with me for years now and have always stood right next to me. I will be forever grateful. I am sorry if you do not agree with our recent decisions on the plea deal. BK literally is too afraid to die, but he wasn't afraid to kill. BK wanted a plea deal and he was given one. Kaylee was not offered a plea deal. The state is showing BK mercy by removing the death penalty. BK did not show Kaylee any mercy. People tell us we should be happy with life in prison without parole as he will never get out. How is that not a win, they ask. Well, the death penalty also means life on death row. We knew it would be decades before he would ever face the firing squad. We knew that his execution was not going to happen anytime soon, but his life on death row, while serving his time, would have been much worse than serving his time as life in prison. So they're saying his life on death row would have been worse than life in prison. Life in prison, it sounds like they believe he'll have a lot more privileges. He'll be able to do a lot more things. It won't be 23 hours inside a cell, 1 hour out in the yard every day, that type of thing. He doesn't deserve life in prison. He deserved life on death row. Also, people say that the Gonsalveses don't want justice. They want vengeance. Well, let me ask you a question about that. If your 21-year-old daughter was sleeping in her bed and BK went into her house with the intention to kill her, and he did by stabbing her many times, as well as beating her in the face and head while it was clear that she fought for her life, what would you want, justice or vengeance? Now, Steve Gonsalves had said, I believe on the Drunk Turkey show a couple of months ago, because I used the clip on Crime Fix, on Law and Crime, that Kaylee had been punched in the face. And we can only, if that's true, we've not seen the autopsy reports. We've not heard that anywhere else. That would be because she fought back and woke up. We know from the court filings that Maddie Mogen was not awake when this happened. We know that. I've read all of the court filings. There was an expert ready to testify that Maddie Mogen was simply too incapacitated and too intoxicated. She would not have been able to fight back. She had been out drinking and she was passed out. And so I guess they looked at her blood alcohol content. The state had an expert who was going to testify in the rebuttal case, if it came to that Maddie, there was no way she could fight back. She had no defensive wounds whatsoever. So Maddie Mogen was killed in her sleep. And I've told you in the past that I do believe that Maddie was the intended target here. Kaylee was there. She had already moved out. She came back for the weekend. I believe this was a sexually motivated crime and that Maddie was the target. I'm going to take you on the tour of the neighborhood that I did a couple of years ago. I'll show you the video another time. So if Kaylee was punched in the face and the head, that's why that would have happened. Again, the Gonsalveses have said this, but we've not heard that anywhere. That's not been in any court documents, but somebody has obviously led them to believe that or shared that information with them. We have never been told that. All we've ever heard was that there were stab wounds and that her injuries, I guess Steve Gonsalves had said in the beginning, were more severe than Maddie's. So this continues. Also, people say that the Gonsalveses don't want justice, they want vengeance. Well, let me ask you a question about that. If your 21-year-old daughter was sleeping in her bed and BK, okay, sorry, I already read that part. What would you want, justice or vengeance, if this happened to your daughter? Maybe a little of both. I'm curious how you would all feel. It gets so old having people say we want vengeance and make it sound like we are animals for having those feelings. I just find it so hard that so many people are judging us and they have never stepped foot in our shoes. Many people are talking about our GoFundMe and returning everyone's money. I understand this is a priority for many people. Please give me time to figure out the best way to do this. I can't just ask GoFundMe to reimburse everyone, as the money has already been deposited into my bank account and is no longer held by GoFundMe. Steve and I need a few days alone to process what has happened. It is so hard to describe what we are going through right now. It is very mentally and emotionally exhausting. My whole body aches from my fingertips to my toes. Please give us some grace. I promise we won't skip town. Hashtag Kaylee Jade forever. Hashtag Gonsalves Army of Love forever. So there you have it. Maddie's family also had a GoFundMe. The Gonsalveses had raised quite a bit of money. The one for Maddie raised $47,655, according to the totals here. The one from the Gonsalveses, I thought, raised about $80,000. So that's what the Gonsalveses have said right now. Crazy Mom RN says, how about setting up a nonprofit to help educate college kids? There is a foundation, I believe, that they've are a part of, actually. There is a foundation that they're a part of. There's been some, I know there's the Maddie May Foundation, and I want to show that on here, actually. So sorry, guys. Here. There's Maddie May Day, but it's Made with Kindness Foundation. That's what it is. And it's in memory of all three girls. Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie. It's called the Made with Kindness Foundation. Be your best self through self-awareness is what it says. They do offer scholarships. They have events as well. The Make It Pink Gala was on June 13th, 2025. Please join us for a beautiful night to remember and honor the gracious souls of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, and Xana Kernodle to raise funds for like-minded students and let their legacy live on through Made with Kindness Foundation. Maddie May Day was on May 25th. That was in honor of Maddie's birthday. Kaylee Jade Day was June 8th. And then Xanapalooza, of course, was yesterday. It was a day to be silly, do something fun, and get out of your comfort zone. Tell the people around you that you love them, and most importantly, honor Xana. One of the things that I thought was interesting on here, they talked about their co-founder of this is Ashlyn Couch, one of the roommates. She had lived at the house previously and I guess didn't live there that fall. And they were looking to raise awareness about how you should do things to be safe on social media too. So these young women all had a lot of things, a lot of postings on social media showing the house. So I think that that's one of the things that the foundation is focusing on. Ashlyn's mother is the founder. Ashlyn's the co-founder. And Karen Laramie, who is Maddie's mother, is the community engagement coordinator. So, but maybe the Gonsalveses will do that. Maybe they will use some of the GoFundMe money to help the Maddie May Foundation do things in Kaylee's memory. We don't know. She's saying give us a few days to figure all of this out. We have a new member. Mandy Strong is a new member. Thank you so much, Mandy, for coming on board as a member. I really appreciate that. We're going to talk about what comes next and what we still don't know. So Mandy, thank you so much for becoming a member. I appreciate it. Remember, if you're just joining, guys, and if you're watching on replay, thank you so much for watching on replay. If you're just joining live, thank you for coming in. Hit the subscribe button and give me that thumbs up, the like. That really helps the video with the algorithm here on YouTube. And we have memberships. So please, if you'd like, become a member. Use the emojis. We'd really appreciate it. We try to have some fun here while sticking to just the facts, just the things we know. So what's going to happen next? Bryan Kohberger will be sentenced on July 23rd. Judge Hippler said that he wanted the victims with different perspectives. There are victims with a number of different perspectives here. You have the surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan, who people have asked me, were they there the other day? From where I was seated, I kept looking over and looking to see all of the people in the courtroom and try to determine exactly who was there, who was with who, that type of thing. All of the rows on that side of the courtroom, you didn't see them on camera. They were full, just 4 rows stacked full of people. So I could not see that clearly exactly who was over there, but I'm told that DM, the roommate who saw, who we can now say is Bryan Kohberger, dressed in all black, bushy eyebrows and all, walking through that house, Bill Thompson said, with a container. We still don't know what that means. Judge Hippler had written in one of his filings or one of his orders that she called it a vacuum type object, which we had kind of speculated in the past. Did she actually see the knife in his hand? And she thought maybe it was a vacuum crevice tool type thing. We just don't know. Is it possible that Xana, in fighting for her life, threw something at Bryan Kohberger? He feared maybe it had his DNA on it, so he grabbed it and took it. We don't know. But I'm told that DM was there and she was sobbing. I told you the other day that Bryan Kohberger's mother and father were there. There was a woman with dark hair and kind of big dark glasses there with them. I've seen that woman before. I don't know if she's a member of the defense team. I'm thinking she might be. I'm thinking she might be somebody with Ann Taylor's office, possibly, and she was kind of guiding them through this. Other members of the defense team were sitting to their left. You all did not see them on camera. But Bryan Kohberger's family, I saw them. They were there. His mother and father were there. I did not see the sisters. They weren't there. So Judge Hippler, as I said there are victims with many different perspectives. He wants them to be able to speak if they wish. So he set this for July 23rd. The victims will be allowed to speak. I'm assuming because this is a sentence that's already determined, it's a 10-year fixed sentence on the burglary. Then it's also 4 consecutive life sentences. So that means they'll be served 1 life sentence. Then after that, the other life sentence, 2nd, 3rd life sentence after that, 4th. 4 consecutive life sentences. We know that will happen. So this is all predetermined. The judge is not going to give a lighter sentence than that. I can tell you that right now. Judge Hippler is not going to go and say, okay, I'm going to give you a lighter sentence than 4 consecutive life sentences. He's not going to do that. That's not going to happen. He could, but he's not going to. I think that Judge Hippler is horrified by this case. He even talked about, the hell, my words, not his, the hell that the surviving roommates have been put through. And the speculation that they were somehow involved in this. Why didn't they call 911 for 8 hours? Why didn't they do this? They must have done this. They must have been involved. All of it. So I'm sure they will be allowed to speak. All of these people, all of the victims will be allowed to speak. And he even talked about the possibility of it going into a second day. So that's also a possibility. So we just have to wait and see how it goes. And then Bryan Kohberger will be given the opportunity to speak if he so wishes. We will see if Bryan Kohberger chooses to say anything at this sentencing hearing. Do you guys think he'll say anything at the sentencing hearing? Because he could. I go back and forth. I want to thank Courtroom Confidential is here. How sweet. Oh, Courtroom Confidential has gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much, Courtroom Confidential, for doing that. That is sweet. I'm going to look and see who got those. And I will shout you guys out for that. Let's see who got those, who was gifted those memberships. I'm looking now, guys. So Courtroom Confidential has gifted 5 memberships. And I just heard me on the delay. I don't need to hear myself talk. Here, I'm trying to see who got the memberships. Oh, it looks like Johnny Knoxville gifted some memberships too. That's very generous, guys. Real happy. Okay, so we have new, let me do some shout outs for our new memberships. Maui Girl, got a welcome. Maui Girl is one of our new members. Thank you so much. Real Happy, a new member. Warflare is a new member, thanks to Johnny Knoxville. Marissa J is a new member, thanks to Johnny Knoxville. And Northern Lass, Marie Zapizi is a new member, thanks to Johnny Knoxville. Thank you. And now I'm going over to the Courtroom Confidential ones. I'm looking, guys. I'm getting there as fast as I can. That's very sweet. I'm working on it, guys. Trying to get the new membership or new member shout outs for you. That's very sweet, guys. Oh, I'm getting them right here. Okay. Our new Crazy Mom RN, thank you, is a new member. Thanks to Courtroom Confidential. Thank you for the gift. What are you saying? Received a gift membership from Courtroom Confidential. Andrea received a gift membership from Courtroom Confidential. Harlot Oscara, welcome as a new member from Courtroom Confidential. And Afton Fored, I believe, is a new member from Courtroom Confidential, I think. So if I missed anybody, I apologize, but thank you so much, guys. That's very sweet of you. Thank you so much. So do you think that Bryan Kohberger will speak, and do you think his parents will speak at the sentencing hearing? I don't know. I mean, since it's a fixed sentence and it's all done, I don't know if he'll speak or not. Do you think he will? I mean, he may want to say something, he may not. He may want this over with, which I find stunning still. I still find it stunning that he wants it over with. Because he was so steadfast in wanting a trial for so very long. It's just amazing to me. I want to play a little bit more for you just so you can see it of Bill Thompson doing his statement of facts again. So let's pull this up, and I'm going to play that for a moment just so you can watch this and see what you think about it. And if you have any questions, please let me know. But let's take a look at this from the other day. So we're going to go through and watch Bill Thompson read his statement of facts again. We did watch this the other night, but we'll watch it one more time.
Trial.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the organization of the resuscitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence, as an overview, would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing in his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Lake Powell County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was a traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Bryan Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then move to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include a trial, video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. Comes into the immediate area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. And approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King and Queen Road, did a U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that the defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the 1122 King Road residence. The state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. The defendant entered the residence, went to the third floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and King Gonzalez. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath.
I truly believe this was a huge mistake by Bryan Kohberger. I believe that he put it down. My theory is that he put this sheath down because I believe he took the knife out. I believe he was going to commit a sexual assault and he placed that down. I think that, as I've said, I think Kaylee waking up shocked him, surprised him, and this is why things unfolded the way that they did.
as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single source male DNA was on the snap with that sheath. The state's evidence would show that Xana Kernodle was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the 3rd floor. It was on the 2nd floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed-blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were 2 other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on.
I understand Bill Thompson saying there was no sexual assault. And there wasn't a sexual assault. That doesn't mean that this was not a sexually motivated crime. So I think he's trying to make it clear to the public that a sexual assault didn't happen. But again, this, I believe, was a sexually motivated crime. So I don't think that you can say there was no sexual component. There may not have been a sexual assault actually committed, but I do believe this was a sexually motivated crime. I want to welcome a new member, 2 Eggs Over Easy. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. And then our other new members, I think I missed some people before. Thanks to Courtroom Confidential for these memberships. Ariel, welcome. Harlot Oscara, I think I shouted you out before as well. And Nina Drew, thank you so much for the super sticker. Very kind of you. Let's thank you so much, Nina, for the sticker. Idiot Wind, thank you so much for joining. She says 10 for my tardy penalty, another 10 for my paltry expression of appreciation. Neon A, happy birthday, beautiful baby Xana. Her favorite color was pink, catching up on 1.5 speed. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. And yes, happy what would have been Xana's 23rd birthday. Just awful. Just sickens me. But we'll continue watching and then we'll talk a little more.
And saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, the defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom would see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walenta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks it heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrives at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. He was there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30, the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up. various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there. In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined, on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following.
Just so you know, when he talks about that, when he was talking about that, and I mentioned this the other day, but as Bill Thompson was talking about that, Bryan Kohberger, as Bill Thompson was talking about all of this, Bryan Kohberger was just like this, looking straight at Bill Thompson, looking kind of straight ahead, but at Bill Thompson, and he didn't blink. I really felt he was transfixed by this description. It was almost like he was seeing if he missed anything. That's how I took it. I don't know Bryan Kohberger personally. I can't judge his reactions, but it was, he was just like this. I mean, I have to blink because I'm a blinker. I blink a lot. But his eyes were wide open, and he was transfixed by what Bill Thompson was saying. I was waiting for him to actually, it was like, he knows there's not, I got the feeling he knows Bill Thompson doesn't know everything. Or maybe he was thinking, wow, they really got everything. They really figured this out. And it's amazing with Bryan Kohberger, they're saying, well, he studied crime, that he made so many ridiculous mistakes. And if he hadn't made these mistakes, then he wouldn't have been caught. Particularly the sheath. The sheath was the big mistake. And I think that was left not on purpose. I think that things did not go according to his plan.
Sunday, November 13th, 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders. The evidence also will suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these transactions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicle seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and returned to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Kohberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Logan's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body at the crime scene. I can tell the court, in public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look through our own cars, you know, in those compartments in the doors. You can try to keep them clean where you put stuff. There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill.
Watching this again, there are a couple of things that stand out to me, and I'm going to tell you why. First of all, one of our commenters said he dropped the knife sheath under her leg. Yeah, right. I don't think he dropped it under her leg. I think that he placed it down. I think that he unsheathed the knife. Think he took it out. Maybe some people think he left it as a calling card. Maybe he did. I'm not of that mind. I think it was a mistake that he made. I've shown you the sheath before where the DNA was on the inner snap. We don't know if it was on the outer snap because they didn't test the outer snap because they wanted to leave that in place for fingerprint analysis. So that was never swabbed. It was the inner part of the sheath. And I have the sheath right over there. Second of all, I think that my thinking on this was that he took the knife out of the sheath. He put it on the bed because he was going to commit a sexual assault. He sat the sheath down, and then Kaylee awakened while whatever was happening happened. She hadn't been in bed that long. She had been dialing her boyfriend before this. It's just my theory, guys. I could be wrong. What basically interested me about what Bill Thompson just said, the knife has not yet been recovered. He said it's not yet been recovered. Did you catch that? Everybody's been really upset because Bryan Kohberger was not required to allocute. But Chris McDonough, I saw him talking about this. He's a retired homicide detective. He has a show on YouTube. I saw him on another podcast saying that Bryan Kohberger was required to write out what happened and what he did. So he's saying, Bill Thompson's saying the murder weapon has not yet been recovered. Not yet. So I'm wondering if he's hopeful that they will recover it. That's what that sounded like to me. So I'm thinking possibly, if that's true, Chris McDonough, it sounds like, has some pretty good sources, and his sources have led him to believe, or at least a source, I don't know how many sources he has, from what I heard on another podcast, that the Attorney General's office was basically calling the shots here. They didn't want to move forward with a trial. They were open to this deal because this was costing the state of Idaho a fortune. Imagine how much it's costing for all of this. Plus, if they had to sequester the jury, which was a real possibility in this case, Judge Hippler said that. Plus, Bryan Kohberger's legal team, all of his experts that they've paid for, the state, they're paying for everything for the state. It would have been a lot. And he's saying that the Attorney General's office said, yeah, let's do the deal, because it was costing a fortune. And I'm thinking, if that's true, that Bryan Kohberger had to write out, if he had to write a statement about what he did, and then the prosecution had to sign off on this, that is a form of allocution. So it's not in front of a camera. It's not in front of a camera with police officers questioning him in a videotape statement, which is, I think, the best evidence you could have is, on tape. But they're saying, Chris McDonough is saying he had to write it out. I mean, it's entirely possible that they did a videotape statement. We won't know for some time. So I'm going to try to ferret out some information about that. So it sounds like they're open to the fact, or open to the possibility, that they may be able to find the knife. They may still be looking for it right now based on what Bryan Kohberger told them. It may not be in the river. It may not be in the water. He may have buried it somewhere. You just don't know. I mean, we really don't know.
So, Your Honor, at the end, the state submits the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that to present in court would consume weeks, which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Mr. Kohberger entered the residence of 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Manny Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. Thank you.
Thank you.
So obviously, Bill Thompson, this is very emotional. He's received a lot of criticism for that, for getting choked up when talking about this. A lot of people think that was forced. I can't say either way. It's a really, really awful thing. I mean, just this whole thing is just horrific. It's horrific. I saw a comment in here that I wanted to highlight. Somebody was saying that they may take Bryan Kohberger to the area to locate this knife. And I'm telling you that that's a possibility that could possibly happen. It's entirely possible that Bryan Kohberger is going to tell them exactly where this evidence is. The sheath, or I'm sorry, pardon me. It's entirely possible he's going to lead them to the murder weapon, to the clothes. I mean, if you're going to button this case up with a plea deal, a case of this magnitude with 4 homicides, then you've got to have something to back up, to corroborate his confession. You already have a mountain of evidence. I'm talking about evidence that only the killer would know, and evidence that the evidence that only the killer would know about would be where the murder weapon is located and any other items used in the commission of the homicide that were ditched. If he buried this evidence, he will know where it's located, and he will be able to show the police where that's located. That will put to rest any questions about whether Bryan Kohberger indeed committed these crimes, which he has admitted to. But that is corroborating evidence that backs up his statement. And so only he would know where these items were located. No one else, unless he told somebody. So if that's true, that's going to be very interesting when they recover those items, if they're able to recover those items. If he buried those items, if he threw them in the Snake River, in the other body of water, we don't know. I think that's awfully risky. Burying it or burning it would probably be the best ways to dispose of this evidence. But then burning it, you draw attention to yourself. Why he picked the location where he potentially buried it, we just don't know. The drummer guy says they should definitely make that a priority. Exactly. They need absolute proof, because any reasonable person would take a plea deal if him and his lawyers know he could be wrongly accused. It's just, he has to be able to offer something to back up. Even though they have all of this evidence, this is evidence that is publicly available. These are things that are known, even with the DNA. It's all known. So leading to the prosecution to the location of the murder weapon and any clothing he wore, the balaclava, any other items of evidence, shoes, clothing, whatever, that would seal the deal. And if he took any souvenirs, this all happened so quickly and in a frenzy, it sounds like. Did he take any souvenirs? That's another question. That's something that a lot of people, a lot of killers will do, especially in a homicide such as this one. Again, I'm not of the mind that he went in there to kill 4 people. I think he was targeting one person and he lost control of his sick plan, and that's it. I think it went sideways, and I hate to say that because the whole thing should never have happened. It's awful. So I think that for everybody getting upset that there's no allocution, or at least a public allocution, I think we have to wait to see whether or not the prosecution did indeed have Bryan Kohberger write out a statement. If he did it in writing, fine. I still think you do videotape as well with the police asking questions to get a clearer picture of how this unfolded. Videotape is always the best evidence. You can do a written statement along with that. I think this Bryan Kohberger knew he was out of options. He knew he was done. And much like Jake Wagner in the Pike County Massacre case, if you followed that case out of Ohio, where 8 members of one family were killed in one night by members of another family who hatched a plan over many months, Jake Wagner was afraid to die. He didn't want the death penalty. And in that case, just so you're aware, and I think there could be some striking similarities here, Jake Wagner told his lawyers months before he actually asked them to get a plea deal for him. He was facing the death penalty. It was an octuple homicide case. It was horrific. He told his lawyers he did it. They apparently had laid out the evidence to him and said to him, we can't beat this. They've got you. We cannot beat this case. He insisted he was innocent and he didn't do it. Then his grandmother, Rita Newcomb, pleaded guilty to forgery and obstruction. And so that was a wake-up call to him. And then he said he kind of found God. So he told his lawyers he did it, despite maintaining his innocence for so long. He maintained his innocence, said, I didn't do it. They said, they've got all this evidence. We can't beat this. You know, you're going to get the death penalty. Grandma pleads guilty to these misdemeanor charges. She says, I'm a good Christian. I couldn't lie anymore. Then something comes about and Jake says to his lawyers, I guess he sits there for a while. He finds God, whatever happens. And he goes to his lawyers and he's like, you know what? I want to plead guilty. Jake didn't want to die. Even though they never execute anybody in Ohio anymore, he didn't want to die. He was afraid of the death penalty. So he made a deal, and it was a deal with the devil. Prosecutors made a deal with the devil. And Jake said, I'll plead guilty to all of these and serve life in prison without parole if you take the death penalty off the table for me and for all of my family members. And then I want you to, I'll testify against them, but I want you to take the death penalty off the table for all my family members, but I'm going to testify against them. So he was like saving his family members' lives. Bryan Kohberger probably realized he's smarter than Jake Wagner. But he probably realized he has no defenses. This was going nowhere fast. He was going to lose, more than likely. And so he probably said to Ann Taylor, okay, I'm done. We're done. Like, let's do this. Let's get a plea deal. And Ann Taylor probably had talked to him about this in the past. She had said at a recent hearing, I remember this, may have been April, May, somewhere in there. She didn't say, I think he's innocent. She said, he maintains his innocence. And I feel like a lot of the wind had been taken out of her sails in recent months. Her demeanor had just totally changed. And maybe it was because of Judge Hippler. He's so no nonsense. I call him Hippler the Hammer. But I think that she probably had talked to him about this, about getting a plea deal. She probably thought, we have nothing here. That's why you saw them with the OCD and all of this stuff, like trying, he cleans his car meticulously because he has OCD. He's OCD. So he's like taking his car apart and scrubbing it and running around with gloves on all over creation. He wears gloves all the time because he has OCD. That's where all this stuff was coming from. And he very well may have OCD. I'm not saying he doesn't, but they were trying to explain away all this bizarre behavior, fastidious cleaning products, a bucket of cleaning solution and cleaning supplies right next to your Hyundai Elantra parked in your parents' garage over Christmas break. I can tell you right now, if I had ever driven home from college over Christmas break, My parents aren't having me park in their garage. They're parking in their garage. I'm parking on the driveway or in the street, and then running his garbage over to the neighbor's house. They were trying to explain all of that away. Guys, we're going to still work to answer your questions on all of this, because there are still a lot of questions to be answered. So let's keep an eye out for that, because Bryan Kohberger very well may have been required for all the hell the prosecution is getting for this plea deal. He very well may have been required to give some type of statement, whether it was written or on videotape or both. And he may have been required as part of that agreement, even though it wasn't announced in court. Bill Thompson said, we have not yet recovered. He said, we have not yet recovered. That leaves open the door that they may recover it. Have not yet recovered the murder weapon. There's still a possibility, I think. Lainey Carter, thank you so much for the super chat. What do you think about BK's attorneys holding hands? You mean holding his hands? I think that they're his lawyers. They've developed a professional relationship with him. If they've held his hands or what have you, or I saw Ann Taylor kind of put her hand on his arm. They're his advocates. That this is their job, and they may be horrified by what he's done, or they may have. I'm sure they are horrified by what he's done, but they may have developed some sort of affinity for him. Just because he's committed this horrific crime, they are his advocates. Just because I know it's hard, but I'm assuming they are very good at compartmentalization. This is their job. I'm sure Ann Taylor has had some very difficult conversations with Bryan Kohberger, and they've basically said he can be difficult. They were having trouble dealing with him, they said, because he's such a black and white thinker, and they blamed it on autism. He probably thought he could get out of this somehow. But then he came around to the idea. Something clicked. I know Howard Bloom is reporting that he didn't want his parents on the stand. He didn't want them testifying about those phone calls. He Dateline saying he called a phone number registered to his father at 6 a.m. He got home at 5:30 a.m., they said, from committing the murder. 6 a.m. he's on the phone with either his mother or father for an hour, almost an hour. And I think there was a call later than that. What happened during that time? Was he normal Bryan, or did he lead his mother to believe? Did his mother know something just wasn't right? Who knows? Did he say, Mom, I screwed up? We just don't know. We don't know. There's a lot we don't know. But we do know that morning he took this photo. Was he congratulating himself? Was that what this was? So we're going to continue to follow this and get to the bottom of it. Everybody wants answers. If you're just joining, thanks so much for joining, guys. Please hit the like button, that thumbs up, hit the subscribe. Thumbs up is great. It helps the video with the YouTube algorithm and all of that good stuff. If you're watching on replay, thanks so much for watching on replay. Remember to tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I just love it. I love seeing when you guys tell me where you're watching from. It's just really good. I really get excited. I'm working on refining the presentation. Some people have been complaining about that. I'm doing my best here, guys. So people want me to take it down. They're disgusted. It's really hard, guys. This whole thing is horrific. It's disgusting. These kids should still be here. It makes me so angry that this was how, and when I say angry, I can still do my job. But it's so upsetting to me that this ended the way that it did. And I think every time we talk about this, we have to remember these beautiful kids. I call them kids because they were college kids. I mean, they were young. Yes, they were young adults, but they deserved so much more than this. They deserve to be here. So I feel like we need to remember them every time we do this, and people need to lay off Bethany and Dylan because they are victims in this. But I'll be working to find out the answers to more questions. I know we all have questions. I'm going to work to get those answers. We're going to stick to the facts here. I'm always looking to stick to the facts. None of us is perfect. I'm going to work to still get answers for you guys about everything that happened and why. And when I say that, I don't mean we're not going to get gory and gross, and we're just going to figure this out because there's no reason that this should have happened. But that picture is what everybody should think of when they think of this case. There's a book coming out soon by Vicki Ward and James Patterson. Amazon Prime documentary is coming out. There's a documentary that came out this past weekend that I'm featured in. If you all would like to watch, it's on Peacock. It's called The Idaho Murders. I was interviewed for this documentary earlier this year. It was supposed to come out in August, at the beginning of August. And with recent events, they decided to drop it. They dropped the documentary earlier. Thank you so much, Mitch. Mitch Evans, watching from YouTube. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat, Mitch. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But here, I'm going to show you, here's the documentary on Peacock. If you heard my dog barking just now, I apologize for that. Somebody's knocking at the door. Here's the documentary I'm featured in on Peacock. Joseph Scott Morgan, forensic death investigator, is also featured in the documentary. To be honest with you all, I've since I got home from Boise, I've been so kind of crazy busy with responsibilities. Yes, somebody's at my door. Crazy mom RN. Yeah, that's why the dog was barking. I apologize, guys. So I'm featured in this, as is Joseph Scott Morgan, and friends of Xana and Kaylee and Maddie are also interviewed in this. Steve Gonsalves, the younger Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee's brother, is featured in this. So I've seen only about 20-25 minutes. I'm going to start watching the rest of it tonight. Maui girl, I'll tell you that I'll tell the dog that you said hi. But yeah, so I'm in this. Other people are in this. If you would like to watch it, great. Obviously you don't have to, but I'm letting you know it's out. Joseph Scott Morgan's in it, as I mentioned, as is Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee's brother. The friends of Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana are in this as well. There's another one coming out on Amazon Prime for those of you who are asking. So this is the documentary. So check it out and let me know what you think if you'd like. As I mentioned, it was supposed to out in August, and now it's not. It's came out this past week because the subject one of the subjects of the documentary pleaded guilty, so it's out early. The Amazon Prime documentary comes out on Friday. I look forward to watching that. But guys, I'm going to stay on top of all of it for you. There's still a lot to discuss and a lot to figure out. I want to talk now about another case really briefly, and then I'm going to wrap this up. Barry Morphew, Suzanne Morphew. Have you guys been following this case at all? Barry Morphew is accused of murdering his wife, Suzanne, back on Mother's Day of 2020. Barry Morphew was charged with murdering his wife once before. The case was then withdrawn by the prosecutor after a lot went on with this case. It was a hot mess. There was a hearing going on, a hot mess. Barry Morphew actually felt so wronged by this prosecution team that he filed a lawsuit. Can you believe that? And I'm going to talk more about this in another live, but I just want to give you a little bit of a preview. So Barry Morphew is charged with murdering his wife, Suzanne. She disappears. Her bike is found out in the woods somewhere. You know, she had been out allegedly on a biking trail. Cops said, no, 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 he killed his wife. He did it. They dropped the charges. I mean, the case looks like a hot mess. Barry Morphew sues the state saying you violated my rights. After this, Suzanne's skeletal remains are found while there's a search going on for another missing person. Barry Morphew's free as a bird. He's running around, he's hanging out in Arizona, talking to women, all kinds of good stuff for him. His daughters, their children, stood by him. Well, guess what? Just in the last couple of weeks, Barry Morphew was indicted and charged yet again with murdering Suzanne. There's something different this time, though. And we're going to go through this some more, this whole thing, this whole indictment on another show, but I wanted to just preview it for you. There's a drug called BAM. BAM is used as a tranquilizer for certain animals like deer and other animals. BAM was apparently found in Suzanne Morphew's remains. Barry Morphew had a prescription for BAM. He had this at his disposal, the BAM drug. He was the only private citizen in the whole area where he lived with access to BAM. They also say that cell phone technology, cell phone records and data link Barry Morphew, kind of matches up with him committing this crime. The marriage was on the rocks. She was done. So we're going to be covering this. Barry Morphew, I was in Idaho when this went on. And I was very interested in this case when he was first charged. I mean, I'm still interested in it, but we've all been sitting here waiting. When's he going to be charged again? He's suing the state. When's he going to be charged again? I mean, that's a pretty gutsy move. Sue the prosecution. Gutsy stuff, man. You sue the prosecution when you sue them for violating your rights. Now he's going to maintain his innocence here. Don't get me wrong. But let's look at Barry smiling big for the cameras. This is from 9 News in Denver. I'm going to slow it down just so you can see he's very happy coming into court. Whoop. Skipped ahead too much. But I was like, whoa, when they brought him into court, that was a big smile. There he is. I slowed it down for you. Look at him, big smile. So there he is. He'll plead not guilty. That's the process. That's what happens. Every case, people plead not guilty. That's what happens. So we're going to be covering that case here. We're going to be covering the Adelson case. Donna Adelson's trial is coming up in September. Stephen Stearns accused of murdering and sexually battering Maddie Soto in Florida. We're going to be covering that. I'll be talking to you about that. I've covered it extensively for Law and Crime. And Christina Formella, the teacher out of Illinois, accused of having sex with a student in her classroom and at her home. We'll be covering that too. We're going to be covering a lot of stuff. And everybody, let me know what cases you want to talk about. But I've got a whole roster of cases that we can talk about. Corey Richens, I see that too. So everybody, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm going to wrap it up. Remember, hit that thumbs up button. It helps the video. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much. Become a member if you want. Get some really cool emojis. I might add some more to it. And if you've been watching on replay, thanks for watching on replay. I appreciate it. We're going to check in with you here later in the week. I don't know what day yet, but we'll figure it out as we go, because back to work tomorrow after a long holiday weekend. I hope everybody had a great 4th of July weekend if you're here in the United States. And I'll see you back here next time. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.